history that is within the Mahabharata and Ramayana is not used to actually help understand the foundation of India. Everything that is in the text is misappropriated and misinterpreted.
What is the reason behind this enduring myth?
Aryan Invasion migration was not true. Some of them are stuck on these colonial theories. There might be some racism still surviving within some sections of the society. They appropriate the name of India. They appropriate the texts that belong to India, and they gave it to themselves. The editors were very brave to support me and to back up my research, and I stand by what I said.
What is the historical evidence for caste?
One of the early historians actually tried to micro-study of a jati. So he tried to do it, but there is no system to how one jati is evolved, or there is no system to how one jati becomes to this level or one jati becomes to this level. As India becomes poorer, the groups have to support themselves more because they have no other support. It was tried to be systematized by Akbar, and it was finally systematized by the British.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning. My name is Pushpita Prasad. I'm on the board of the Coalition of Hindus of North America, CoHNA for short. I'm also the Chief Communications Officer for the group, and today it's my privilege to be talking to Professor Lavanya Vemsani, who I think needs no introduction. But I think I will still go ahead and read out her bio for people who may not understand the depth and scale of what she has achieved. So before I do that, I'll just give a quick overview on what CoHNA itself is. So CoHNA is a grassroots advocacy organization focused on civil rights, education, and representation for Hindus living in the United States and Canada. We were set up 5 years ago, so we are actually 2025 is our 5-year anniversary. And I like to say that it's amazing that a crazy idea born during the pandemic has come this far and grown into this movement across 2 countries. So one of the things we like to do as part of our work is to really educate our community and those beyond on how to look at academia, how to look at history, how to understand some of the concepts that do shape us every day in our day-to-day lives, whether it's the United States, whether it's Canada, whether it's UK or any part of the world. History is history, but history also shapes the present, and we forget history at our own peril. So it is our privilege to today have Professor Lavanya Vemsani, who is an award-winning scholar and distinguished professor of history, specializing in religion and Indian history in the Department of Social Sciences at Social Shawnee University in Portsmouth, Ohio. Dr. Vemsani holds 2 doctorates. If one wasn't enough, she holds 2 doctorates on the subjects of religious studies and was recognized with a Fulbright scholarship in 2020. She researches and publishes on the subjects of ancient history and religions, as well as the current history in India. She also serves as the president of the Ohio Academy of History. She has written so many books, her most recent one being Reframing India in World History and the Handbook of Indian History, which brought her even more into the limelight and subjected her into a lot of back and forth and some of the issues we will talk about today, as well as books like the Modern Hinduism in Text and Context, Krishna in History, and the Encyclopedia of the Hindu Lord of Many Names, Hindu and Jain Mythology. And I'm sure I've missed some, so please forgive me. She's also an accomplished author and editor of academic journals. So without further ado, Lavanya ji, welcome to CoHNA Dialogues. We are so honored to have you.
Thank you, Pushpita ji. I'm honored to be here. It's my pleasure.
I've been an admirer of Professor Vemsani for, maybe 6-7 years since I first discovered her work. And Vemsani ji has come on CoHNA platforms before. Specifically, I think the first time was when we did a congressional briefing in 2021, specifically targeting the misrepresentations of Hinduphobia in academia, where she provided some very valuable perspective. And we all heard your impressive bio, but I just wanted to say that before we get to some of the impressive work that you've done, because not content to rest on your academic laurels, you are a fighter. I think I look upon you as Shakti, because you're out there, not shy. We are, Hindus, unfortunately, have a reputation of being sort of defensive, being shy, backing away from defending their opinions. And I have looked upon you with admiration and all of us have looked upon you with admiration for not backing down from your fact-based positions and not taking the easy path and going with the flow, which I think we see too much of. So I wanted to just ask, like, what is it that brought you to where you are today? Before we get into your work, I want to say, what is it that brought you to where you are today? Tell us a little bit about your background growing up. Maybe that'll help us understand why you became the fighter you are.
I come from very humble background. I grew up in rural Telangana. Telangana itself is very known for its poverty and backwardness and all that. And I grew up in one of the rural places. I'm one of those people who walked, during my school time, I walked 5 miles, 6 miles, and I read under the lantern, all that was a real experience for me. It's not that it's, it's a rural background in those days, in the 1970s, 80s, until 83, I think the rural electrification is not completed. So that was common for our generation in the state. And I grew up with that type of humble background. I'm the daughter of a headmaster. Poor headmaster, poor school headmaster. So
you can do pretty much anything because of that background.
Yeah. So yeah. And in the the emergency time and after emergency 78, 79, 80s, the long electricity queue and kerosene queue, and I have experienced everything that people make fun of about India.
Wow. So Indians in general are very fond of gravitating to STEM, even though we have a glaring need of having strong voices in the social sciences space. So what brought you and kept you in the social sciences space?
Like everyone, in India, students are encouraged in the school as well as in the family. When you're studying, they encourage you to take STEM. But my interests were more in history and culture and heritage. I grew up in a very, very traditional family who read stories of Mahabharata, stories of Ramayana to the children, and many stories, the Bhatti Vikramarka and lots of other stories also. But Ramayana, Mahabharata, very common. I heard all these Mahabharata stories from my mother before, and classical stories from my father. Anyway, what I learned at home was different, and what I learned in school was different. In school, of course, Mahabharata is seen as our story, and Rama is our, but when you go to school, they are taught as myths, and they are taught as, kind of a Aryan, Dravidian fight. And Mahabharata doesn't have anything like that. Ramayana doesn't have anything like that. Mahabharata is a story of all the people of India that, my family told me. But, the textbooks tell you, it's a fight between, the demons is Dravidian and then, Aryan, and same with Ramayana also. But the things don't match up. And history, of course, sidelines all this. And in the family, you hear, these are your traditional texts. But when you go to school, they are not supposed to be your traditional texts. Because I come from southern India, they call me Dravidian. So for Dravidians, these are not supposed to be traditional texts. The Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, these are the texts from our oppressors. So who are these oppressors? I don't know. So, it's selectively interpreted. The history that is within the Mahabharata and Ramayana is not used to actually help understand the history or foundation of India, but it is only used to divide and used to paint a kind of stranger picture of India. Everything that is in the text is misappropriated and misinterpreted to present kind of this narrative of early colonizers, the mythical Aryans. Actually, the story of Aryans is mythical, but they tell in history that, the actual narratives are mythical. Now, Mahabharata and Ramayana and Vedas are mythical, so So there is a contradiction with what was happening. And I, of course, studied early history of India. I have studied the excavations and, all these early history. So prehistory and early history of India. That was my early PhD thesis. Then but the picture seems incomplete because many of these historical sites, prehistoric, early historic sites I visited, some of them have, um, prehistoric hand axe. The hand axes are large hand axes. So some of them are worshipped in temples as Hanumanji. And it's a prehistoric hand axe, which tells us that there is a continuity between the prehistory. Our people actually kept this prehistoric hand axe in the temple because it's important for us. There is something to it. So, but the history doesn't tell us that. The history tells us, there is this disjunction, and then, so, so I decided to go into history of religion. That's what is my second PhD. So it examines the history of religion from classical texts. And that gives me an understanding of the text as well as the practical experience with interpreting prehistoric data from archaeology as well as from classical texts. So I focused more on this early history to understand the foundations of Indian history, what happened with early Indian history, how Indian chronology is misinterpreted, and how Indian texts were appropriated by putting these stories into history, which was not part of history. It was never part of history. So
your answer actually answered the first question I was going to ask, which was how should we think about Indian history in the context of Western academia? I think a lot of us, at least on the chat here, recognize there's a problem. But you brought up AIT, right? Which is, of course, one of the foundational problems in the way we study Indian history. So I know this is one of the topics you talk about a lot, and you get attacked a lot. So what is the reason behind this enduring myth? Even now that it's been so disproven, it's sort of become AIT has become AMT and out of India, and soon it'll be like, well, people migrated, and who has questioned that people migrated, right? But even then, even though there's so much academic work and archaeological work that has now disproven this theory, it has this powerful grip on academia, in popular culture, and in people's minds. So what do you see as driving that, and how can we continue to tackle it?
Right. For me, I have already said this. There are only the only reason this is still surviving is that some of them are stuck on this colonial theories, the colonialist understanding of history. So I call them colonized mind, lots of colonized mind in Indian history. And the second thing is there might be some racism still surviving within some sections of the society, whether we may like it or not. Otherwise, what is the point of continuing this Aryan Dravidian artificial terms? Otherwise, what is the point of continuing this? And when there is no evidence for these theories, why coin new terms to replace these terms and continue to retrofit the new evidence for it? For example, they started calling, Aryan, replaced the Aryan term with AANI, and they replaced the Dravidian term with AASI.
Oh God,
Seems,
what are those
harmless.
terms?
Yeah. And replace these old terms and retrofit whatever genetic history that is there. The fun thing is there is no evidence to actually separate North Indian or South Indian genetics or genes that much. And whatever R1, R1A they are trying to postulate is found across India and across the southern also and across the tribes, including the Koyas and everyone. And R1A is also found up to Sudan in lots of African nations. And it's found lots of places in across the world. But they try to confuse people by throwing out percentages rather than chronology. For history, chronology, age is more important than percentages. It might be found here, it might be found there, it might be found everywhere. So the point is, how old is it? It is the oldest in India. The origin of after which all these R1s and all these originated actually happens in India. R is actually the mutation happens in India. And then R1A and different varieties of R1 are also found in India, and they're oldest in India. So they're more than 10,000 years older when compared with the European R1A. And the other argument that they find is, they bring up is some skeleton somewhere has R1A, which is, very minuscule. Ancient skeletons, of course, India also has many ancient skeletons. When they are examined, probably we'll find some. So that is, only a incomplete argument. And this argument that it's found here, found there doesn't matter. The oldest is in India, which shows that its origin and its early culture, early civilization before 20,000 years. 20,000 years is in India. So everything comes after it. So it doesn't change it. And the other argument that goes against this Aryan migration debate is, they have inserted Aryan migration into India at 1900 to 1600. And 1900 to 1600, we don't see any sudden genetic change, any sudden R1 change, any sudden historic change. So there is no genetic change. There is no historic change. For example, if a culture came in, they will be bringing new pottery, new clothing, new building structures. So we don't see any of that in excavated sites. More than 5,000 prehistoric sites were excavated across India. And we don't see any of the destruction or changes in Indus Valley. They have supposed to have come to Indus Valley, destroyed the cities, and founded the new civilization. But where is it? Where are they? Where are their graves? Where are their pottery? Where are the new things that they brought?
And why is there no record?
Civilization coming with Vedas,
why is there no record? I would say that even if you are invading and you're proud of your victories, aren't you going to record it? Even if you say that those invaded could not, there's no record from the invader either. Yes. And that is where I, as a non-historian, find it weird, because when you get into later parts of history, you find lots of records of invaders proudly boasting of their invasions, of their conquests. So what kind of invasion is this where neither the invader nor the invaded talked about something that was apparently so significant, but apparently 3,000 years later, we suddenly discovered it?
I know. And initially they said they brought the Vedas with them. Then, when we confronted them, they said, oh, they composed the Vedas here. So if they composed the Vedas here, they know the story, right? Where they come from, what they did. Why didn't they write it? Why is sudden amnesia about their own history? And they wrote everything else. They wrote about the land where they're living, which group is which sage is which yajna is done by which sage, so they recorded everything so perfectly, but not their arrival. So it seems so strange. It's just, kind of a constructed narrative to appropriate. They tried to appropriate what India had. So it was, by appropriating the narrative, they appropriated the Vedas. So Vedas become not Indian, but, theirs. So the Aryans, the better group went to the West. And then the, not better group, the lower, side of the Aryan group comes to India. I don't know, why is the lower group actually saved the Vedas, composed the Vedas, not the highly civilized and better group that went to West? They should be the better ones to keep it, right? So I don't know. The story doesn't make sense other than appropriation. They appropriate the name of India. They appropriate the texts that belong to India, and they gave it to, themselves.
Right. And that's a problem we see continue today in so many different ways. But I want to go back to, so, you are doing what a history professor does. You're looking at, ancient texts, you're looking at history, you're coming up, you've analyzed and you've come up with a position. That's what your job is. That's what professors do. But why do you get attacked so much for doing what professors do, right? I think I wanted to actually ask about the very insidious nature of Hinduphobia that, we Hinduphobia comes in many different ways, from very graphic ways, attacking temples, calling people slurs, but there's a hidden side to it that you face in your profession, and probably other professors and researchers face, but they're not all as brave as you to bring color to it. So I wanted you to bring that out so that people understand why is it that we see so few people like you? Because I think sometimes what happens is it's a vicious cycle, right? They're like, oh, well, there are only a few people who say this. The popular majority lies somewhere else. But how does the popular majority get to be the majority, right? And if you could talk about, I think, the listserv incident, because this is how academicians do work, and how a very normal academic tool was denied to you.
Right. These days it's normal to get attacked on social media. But what happened to me was so insidious. It happened on academic list, where academics freely share their thoughts and their own things. I was attacked there just for sharing call for papers. So that is very insidious. And my papers, the paper I wrote about the Aryans, the Aryan invasion migration, and I used genetic history to prove that that was not a story, that was not true, but a constructed story. And that actually went to a couple of journals, and they said they couldn't publish it. Did not give a reason. So questioning Aryan theory was enough to get it to be sent back. And finally, it was published in one of the academic books. But it took a long time. I actually wrote it in 2008 or 9. I actually spoke about it. I presented it at conferences, academic conferences, Asian Studies Conference and all these conferences. But even after that, it took so long to get published. It's published almost 10 years later, 10 years after I wrote it. So you can imagine how much pushback is there against questioning these narratives. And after I wrote that, of course, I faced a lot of pushback and I faced a lot of attacks, online and offline. And of course, I participated in the panel with you guys on Hinduphobia. And then I wrote a paper on Hinduphobia. And they started sending letters to these journals that published my article. So they published my article on Hinduphobia. I only discuss the academic work that is already there. I talk about what they discussed. I talked about, how academia is not representing what actually was in the text and was on the ground in Indian history. And I also said, I only took the great historians like Eaton and others who have done great work in history. He had done such a great work. He actually tabulated how many temples were destroyed, but he falls short of pointing out why they were destroyed, how they were destroyed. So the only thing I was saying was he falls short of pointing out. He tabulated it. He did all the work. So I just pointed out the academia falls short of pointing out what exactly is happening, even though they know all the facts. They have all the facts. They know about Mahabharata, they know about Ramayana, they know about the festivals, the Diwali, the Holi, and all that. But they still interpret this as, Dravidian versus Aryan. How much Dravidian versus Aryan is there in Holi, Holika Dahan, and Holi festival? But it is interpreted, and that story was used to name the festival as Hindutva. And you know about this Holi against Hindutva organized in many campuses. So it's not harmless. So these interpretations fall short of pointing out the exact truth, and they take it out of the textbooks and push it onto the streets to actually divide the people, which is a problem. So I spoke about that in my paper. The Hinduphobia, I say, the first part is this, where they misinterpret things. And the second part is where they push it onto the streets, fully knowing that the stories they constructed have really no actual historical basis. So I tried to show this is, all a partial narrative being built, and it's actually promoting hatred, which is true. This type of narratives normally promote hatred. And why is this happening? Why should a group be hated so much by constructing artificial narratives? So, what is this? What is going on within the constructed narrative? So, that's what I question. And they sent letters to get this paper withdrawn.
Right.
And of course, the editors were very brave to support me and to back up my research. And I stand by what I said. And they also gave their reply. And one of the editors actually very bravely, Professor Bobonas, actually gave his reply openly on YouTube and online. So this is, not an isolated incident. It is happening. And to me, it's coming out, but maybe it's happening to many people. Many people's papers are rejected. Many people are called. Maybe it's not coming out. So I don't think it's isolated because of how these narratives are entrenched in the academia. So the whole thing is part of it.
It's so scary, right? Because they work at all levels. They won't let you do the research by denying you a listserv. So, okay, if you can't get data, you can't do research, right? And then when you do research and you do publish, they go behind and quietly send these letters, like you said. And we only found out these letters are being sent because the recipient of one of the letters went public. How common is that? And then, of course, when it does get published, they will attack you, they will attack your credibility. And then the best is, after all of this, the other side turns around and says, look, you don't have any academicians that say this. Well, of course they won't, because to say this, you have to be part academician and part fighter, right? And that's a very unique combination. Like, everybody cannot be inspired by Shakti like you. Many academicians just want to be academicians, right? Nothing wrong with that. They don't want to be getting into fights all the time. But the fact that you have to fight to have a viewpoint, it shows the very deep-seated, insidious nature of the problem. So I think, thank you for sharing those. And I think the third part, which we won't get into today, is the circular citation loop, right? Another reason used to depress academic research that would contradict the popular narrative and elevate only certain voices. That could be a whole hour right there. So we won't go into that. Also, for the audience, if you have questions for Professor Vemsani, please put them in the Q&A and we will try to get through them. We know we have a lot, so we will just try to get through as many as we can. One question that already came up, I'll just address it, because a lot of Professor Vemsani's work has focused on the role of women in Hindu scriptures and how that has been misinterpreted. And we had a chat about this before, and we figured that this was such an in-depth and important part of her work that we are going to do a separate webinar on it, because we really can't do justice, given that, she's written entire books on the women of Mahabharata and women in other scriptures. So we appreciate those questions and we will come back to them. But I think, so we come back to the topic of general history and the way Hinduphobia is propagated using history. The other topic I wanted to get your take on is caste. What is the historical evidence for caste? Because this is apparently something that has been part of our civilization. If I were to believe the popular narrative, this caste has been a foundational part of our civilization for 2,500 years or 5,000 years. They can't quite make up their mind how long it has been a foundational text. So I would love to get your thoughts on that.
What we find in the Vedas is only Varna. And what they call caste system is actually lacking a system. There is no system to it. That's the main point that we have to remember. In the West, or in Mesopotamia, or in Egypt, in China, there is always a system to it. The emperor made the list, kept the list, who is the aristocracy, who is not aristocracy, which name is aristocratic name, which is not, who is a baron, who is not a baron. So there is a system to it outside of India. But in India, there is no system to it. So people can find all these names, there is jatis, there is varnas, there is this, there is that. And the names are so different. The jatis are different from one place to the other place. They differ every 50 miles. And the jatis themselves have so many sub-jatis. So within one jati itself, if somebody wants to study, actually Viri Mahajan, one of the early historians, actually tried to compile a list of the jatis and do micro study of a jati by studying these, Janampatris from marriage. There are these marriage consultants. So he tried to do it, but it's impossible. And he actually had to give up on the project after some time because there is no system to it. There is no system to how one jati is evolved, or there is no system to how one jati becomes to this level or one jati becomes to this level, because the jatis are also different in different places. For example, they call these craftsmen as lower in some places. But in Andhra and Telangana, where I grew up, the 18 crafts, like the potters, the smiths, all of them are not lower caste. They are high caste and tax paying caste mentioned in Vijayanagara inscriptions and other inscriptions, Chola inscriptions. So in other places, maybe. But not in some places. So there is the main thing is there is no system to it. So there might be these varnas. People may claim they belong to this varna, that varna, depending on the circumstances. For example, do you want to know during the 20th century, during British colonial era, people each jati began organizing themselves into a jati group, Yadav Samaj, Khatri Samaj, all these Samajs. And they all began writing their origin stories. And most of them tried to claim that they belong to the Kshatriya lineage. Because Kshatriya lineage during the British era gave some facilities. You can apply for these military jobs and all these jobs. And also you are allowed to travel, across the ocean and all that. So Kshatriya gave more flexibility. So many jatis tried to write their origin stories and claim to be a Kshatriya jati. Doesn't matter, they are here, they are there. So there are many jatis, there are varnas, but there is no system to it. They might go up, they might go down, they might separate themselves into different jatis. And it becomes much more stricter, much more into an organized group. Only in the second millennium, as far as my examination goes, because during the second millennium, they actually had lots of invasions, lots of enslavement. And in Telangana also, these are recorded. When Kakatiyas were defeated, the Islamic armies that came would actually raid the countryside and take the women and children and kill whoever is in their way. So it was a very, very destructive time. So the only way the groups survived was to form a group and help themselves and survive. So the jatis become much more organized, much more internal. Before that, you would see jati mixing and, there is also stories in Andhra Pradesh, the Palnadu Charitra and all that, jati mixing and all that is seen. But after that, you would actually see much more internalization, much more groups and much more of all that. And of course, after the British have arrived, all these smiths and craftsmen lose their job because, the machine-made goods are imported into India. India is allowed only to export the raw material. They are not supposed to make anything. So India becomes poorer. As India becomes poorer, the groups have to support themselves more because they have no other support. There is no government support. There is no welfare. There is no, they don't have their previous rulers or previous groups that helped them. So it becomes even more and more stricter. So I see this phenomenon developing only after the 16th century. It was there, but not systematized. It was tried to be systematized by Akbar when he started to collect these lists and make the lists. And it was finally systematized by the British for their own purpose. But, they put whatever groups wherever they can put. For example, many of the jatis I told you, craftsman jatis are not lower caste in southern India, but they were put as lower. Many of the landed castes are actually considered kshatriya, but they put them also as lower. They did the classification in whatever way they did, and they systematized it in whatever way they did. So calling caste system is a wrong. It's not a system. There is no system to it. There might be jati and varna mentioned in different texts. And the varnas that are mentioned, of course, are there, the four varnas. But it's only considered to be depending on the nature of a person, how he works and how he does or she does things, based on what she does and how she does. But not really about her birth or anything. Jati is, of course, listed in many of these texts, many of the Puranas, Griha Sutras, and all that. And the jati lists are not same in all the texts. So that shows you it's not systematized. If it is systematized, all of them should be same. All of them should have, same kind of classification, same kind of thing. And many of the jati names are not found in classical texts. They are only found in practice from the 13th, 14th century onwards. That tells you the society is trying to organize itself, form groups to protect themselves, because there is no other protective system for themselves. What was there before had fallen down. So this is a new survival mechanism that they adapted from 14th, 15th centuries onwards, because of the onslaught on the culture, onslaught on themselves. That is not ancient, that is not native, that is not kind of like, ingrained, and that's not a system.
Again, as since you like study history, is this community-based sort of approach unique to the Indian subcontinent, or do you find it in other cultures, through history and across different geographies and cultures?
Other colonized societies also. They have this tendency to internalize, tendency to form these formidable groups that help themselves. Colonized societies, you see them. So it's done by some of the Native American groups also. They internalize, they don't try to socialize with others, and they try to protect themselves. This is all protective mechanisms on facing onslaught.
Okay, so there were groups, there were communities. You see a hardening of community-based outreach, or existence, but you're not seeing the system through all of this till much, much more recently.
I don't see the system.
The other question is, of course, hierarchy, right? Because you can have communities, you can have systemic communities. Is there an unbroken hierarchy, which I think is the biggest flaw pointed out in the caste system, is that there's somebody who's been at the bottom for 1,000 years or 5,000 years, which of course is horrible if that has happened to anybody, right? So do we see evidence of some community constantly being at the bottom because of being in a community, and some community constantly being at the top? I would really want to understand that, because not a historian myself, of course, but when the oldest recorded dynasties that I have been taught in Indian history are like the Nanda and the Maurya dynasty, both of whom seem to have had origins not in Kshatriyas. Of course, later on, once they became kings, they all claimed they were, sun and moon descended. But
that's given to them, right? Once you become that, your varna becomes that. It's naturally agreed upon. So it's bestowed on somebody. The varna is bestowed on somebody based on the nature and based on what they do. It's not fixed on anybody.
But they were not born into a Kshatriya family to become kings, right?
Yeah, it's not fixed category, right? There is no system to it. That's the reason there is no system to it, right? The story of Shankara, and the story of Satya Harishchandra falling to become, the cemetery keeper, so there are these ups and downs. Somebody can be so high and go down. Somebody can be down and they can go up. There are narratives to that, and also there are examples to that. Many of these Vaishnava groups, Shaiva groups, they never followed any caste or jati or anything. Buddhist and Jain sanghas also did not put any restrictions on anybody coming to their mata or They would feed freely anybody that comes, and they would also teach freely if they have the tendency to learn. So Sri Vaishnavas, there are many people who joined Sri Vaishnava and became, Vaishnava gurus, don't belong to one group at all. So there are many examples like this, and Shaiva gurus also. The Shaivas, anybody is welcome, and many Shaiva saints and Shaiva teachers, even now, come from all communities.
Right.
So, and no king ever recorded. If it is so important, why didn't Rudramadevi record? And Rudramadevi actually married in different communities, and her children married in different communities. So why wouldn't they record, and why wouldn't they make rules? This is what this is. Others have made, the Greeks have made, the French have made, the Chinese have made. There is this list of aristocrats. Why didn't India make it if it is so important?
Yes, again, I think we've, just like the AIT, right? We find a lot of assumptions that defy logic and defy evidence, but they are still taken as the truth. One more audience question on the topic about the, I guess, toolkits on caste legislations. We are very familiar with them. We fought one bitterly in California in 2023. We thankfully managed to stop it, but the fight continues. I would request everybody to look at our website. We have, I think I can say this quite confidently, cohna.org/decolonize. This is one of the most developed websites, not from an not as an academic website, but resources to help each and everyone understand what's going on, and references to scholarly work like Professor Vemsani and many others, Nicholas Turks. Please check it out. Honestly, it will take you a week to go through it if you follow all the links. It's very in-depth. Please read it. If you have questions, you want to get involved, please come back. This is you can find us at info@cohna.org. If you want to support the fight, please donate to us. Please join it if you're a researcher or scholar, because this is a very, very deep and complex fight, and every organization from the global to the national level is involved, to down to your city level, and everyone needs to fight back. So a big plug for this page. It's been put in the chat. Copy it, save it. It's really not something we can give a lot of answers. I do want to move on from the caste topic, even though it's super important. And if you're interested, please do join. So I'll take a couple of other questions that have come in. Actually, there was one from the very start of the thing, which talked about your background, right? And they were very interested to hear about your background and why you chose social sciences, not STEM. So what scope is there for talented students who have interests like yours in the USA and Canada and other Western countries? Because parents, yes, we are all at fault, parents, and quite rightly so, worry about financial future. Should we be encouraging Hindu youth to go into this and to branch out from STEM?
It is much better to go into the subject. They have their mind and soul involved. If they like the subject, if they are interested in it, they would do much better, and they would live happily. Financial future, all subjects are in trouble. With AI, the STEM is in more trouble than other subjects. So don't be so sure of STEM. So any subject they like to pursue. Maybe it's religion, maybe it's language, maybe it's history, maybe it's some sociology, or maybe it's some other subject. It should be encouraged, because what matters is ultimately their interest and their involvement. If they are involved, they'll do better. So if they do better, they'll be okay with any subject, because now every subject is under same trouble. We can't really say which subject has a better future.
And also, I'll just say that we at CoHNA has a CoHNA Youth Action Network, and we do see a lot of young students who are passionate on these topics, and they are looking to study them professionally and hopefully make careers out of it. And I think, as a lot of our immigration was STEM based, so like the castes of old, we tend to stick with what we know. But that doesn't mean that there are not opportunities out there. There is an increase, there's lots of opportunities, whether you're going to go into the legal profession, go into the government profession. Social sciences opens up a vast world. And as we have seen, STEM people are not immune from the work of social sciences. So when Cisco or passes a caste, adds caste to its protected categories, it doesn't matter how many PhDs you had in STEM. You're now subject to a policy that came from the social sciences field. So if this is an area of passion, if this is an area of interest, it makes no sense not to pursue it because ultimately STEM does not insulate you from any of this stuff. Sundar Iyer of Cisco lawsuit fame is an IIT STEM technologist. So was not saved by that. So, and it won't save anybody, not to dish them, but like, if you look at our own theology, we give value to every subject, not just one subject. Our gurus and our Devi Devtas cover the gamut. Another question from the attendees. History is highly dependent on accurate scientific and cultural interpretation. One of the issues is lack of scientific studies available for interpretation. Indic history still depends on Western tools. So how do tie-ups with, so basically, I guess the question is, how do we move forward from here, and what are some of the resources that we should be looking at to help move the narrative forward and build on it? Is there an Indic historiography, for example?
We should use more Indian labs for carbon dating and for everything. The samples are sent out to even smaller schools. A school in Florida, they sent from Tamil Nadu. So these testing can be done anywhere. These carbon dating and thermoluminescence testing, many university physics labs can do it very easily. But they depend on the West because we are still, I don't want to repeat myself, but, it's colonized mind. So we have to come out of it and trust our own resources better, use our resources more. So
100%.
We are still following this colonized mind. It has 100%. To be them, and they have to put a stamp of authentication, then it's accepted.
100%. There's a lot that already exists, and we should definitely, I think a lot of the times we have a knee-jerk reaction. We want to create more content or we want to create more answers, but many times the answers exist. Understanding is that the term caste was introduced by Portuguese colonizers of Bharat. Can you please comment?
Portuguese actually introduced it in the North America. So others introduced into India. So anyway, it's an alien word. That's true.
I think it's important. It is a good point, and it's important to remember because for a culture of Bharat, which had, so many languages, we are a prolific recorder, writer, oral culture, and somehow we did not have a word for something that was foundational, right? Because there is no Bharatiya equivalent of caste. So we do use
that shows the lack of system.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Brahmins are accused of denying knowledge of Vedas and other castes from becoming a pujari or purohit. What do you think about it?
Of course, I spoke about the southern Indian example of Vaishnavas and Shaivas. Anybody can become priest anywhere, and women too. So it was not a question of denying.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those aspects of forgotten history because even in our own members, we have people who talk about their family-run temples that sometimes they run, sometimes different. So I think community-run temples generally have priests from their own community. And I think
But Shaivas and Shivaishnavism actively recruited from all groups. So they taught and they actually helped many become priests. No jati or any limitations. No limitations.
Right. So why is history important, right? Why should any of us care about this stuff? Does it impact me in my day-to-day life? I want to become I want to have a good job. I want to enjoy my life. That's all I care about. I don't care about these obscure values. What do you answer?
You have answered it already. But I want to quote these two examples again to emphasize how important it is. You cannot peacefully study when somebody is attacking you. for your festivals and for your celebrations, and saying that, Holi against Hindutva, Diwali against Hindutva, for being simple traditional Hindu, you will be attacked as Hindutva. So how are you going to study peacefully and become whatever you want? And how are you going to live peacefully? And then you are, of course, being attacked for caste, even if you don't know what your caste is, even if you don't follow any rules. That can happen, and it has happened in the recent examples. Knowing history, knowing what these things are, knowing how these things are misinterpreted, and how they were flexed to become a fodder for hateful elements, to actually spread hatred, and Hinduphobia actually feeds on these things, on these misinterpreted mythology and misinterpreted, the caste that had no system in India becomes system. So the stories that were never recorded in Indian history or Indian classics become the history. So how is that, so unless you learn and unless you question these narratives, you're never going to escape this trap. It's kind of a trap. So there are these three levels. I already talked about it. The Hinduphobia, they first teach you what your story is, their concocted story, and then they tell you to live according to the rules that they formulated by those rules. So you have to live like this colonized mind. If you refuse, you're a Hindutva, and then you're attacked. So the three layers are already in the play. So there is no escape from it, even if you ignore it and want to go away. No, it's not possible.
How has being taught as Hindutva, that have you seen an impact? I mean, back to the question of, can you have a good career despite doing the fight that you are? I look upon you as very inspirational. So if you get taught as Hindutva, is that the end of your career? Can you fight back? Can you move on?
No. So the Hindutva is not a simple jibe. They are actually meaning harm. So it can harm. It can actually get you attacked, it's not just an attack. It can get your work withdrawn. I don't know how many of my papers have been refused publication because of that. I only know one that came out, but
Right.
others we don't know. They just send you back. They don't give any reason, and you assume, and try to work with some other journal or publisher. So it's not a harmless attack. It's an attack, and it can harm. Probably harmed my career also. Probably harmed many more. Maybe I would have published more. I would have done more if I was not attacked so much.
Yeah. Yes, obviously, because
so it might have done the same to others also. It probably didn't come out.
Of course. I'll take a last question. Cultural appropriation and religious appropriation is always in the news. How does that play out in the context of history? Do you think it's a problem? Do you see it as a way of getting the stories more out there, stripped of their context? What's your take? It's something that we hear a lot from our young folks, especially.
It is a problem. Anytime appropriation happens, it's a problem, whether it is cultural symbols, cultural festivals, cultural things. Due recognition, due acknowledgement must be given to the original source. So when that doesn't happen, it's a problem. For example, the Kolhapuri chappals that were marketed, right? Of course, the marketing is not the issue. The issue is not crediting the original creators, not crediting the original creation, and not crediting the original artisans, and not respecting the geotag. So they had the geotag, and that should be used. So when anybody else is marketing, so it's important. The geotagging is very important for many aspects of Indian culture. They have done this for commercial products like baskets and slippers and dresses and all that, but they have to do that for intangible heritage also, like dances, folk art, and folk designs, and all that has to be done also. They are under the threat of appropriation. And it's important for original creators and original practitioners to keep their claim. And Such appropriation should always be discouraged, and we should always talk. It affects the culture. What a Kolhapuri chapel when it is taken out of Kolhapur, right? It loses its cultural value.
Of course.
Yeah. So same with everything. So we should fight for our cultural heritage, cultural value, and of course, always speak up about it.
Well, we are at the hour. I know we could keep talking, but I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people follow you? I know your Twitter handle. Is that your best thing? We did put it in the chat.
Right. Yes.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Professor Vemsani is a prolific poster on X. She has a very well-regarded followed handle and posts frequently on it. So please do follow her if you're not already following. I would also request everyone to please follow CoHNA. And also, if you can, support our work with donations or volunteering, because this is serious business, as Professor Vemsani sketched out. This takes work, it takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes money. Let's not beat about the bush, right? This is not, and if everyone cannot commit time to it, they really need to commit money to it, because we all have a role in making sure that those who fight for our traditions get support, especially the youth as they explore careers in social science. It would be wonderful to have options where they can do this as a profession, not as a weekend warrior, because weekend warriors can only get so far. I think I'll just ask one question that came in. Is there any new book in the works, Professor Vemsani?
I'm working on the mainly focused on this Aryan theory. It's about India. So who are Indians?
And in the meantime, I hope everyone has looked up and, if possible, bought her books that have already been published, or in some cases asked your university to buy the books, because they are academic books, and also using them as references, because the more a book gets cited and referred to, the more important it becomes in the lexicon of academia. So please do encourage everyone to be aware of those books, to use them, cite them, and to get university libraries and other places to stock them. I think, again, the delisting.
It's showing in the reverse, but this is one of the books that brings true history of India, true chronology and history of India. Other version, paperback version, will be released soon. But for now, suggest to your libraries and suggest to the university libraries, and so.
Fascinating conversation today. We talked about so many things: AIT, caste, Hinduphobia that you face, others face, and how to fight it. So I know there's lots more, and we would love to be back with a conversation just about the role of women in Hinduism and scriptures. So stay tuned for that, everybody. We thank everybody for making time, and namaste.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone, for joining today. Thank you.